Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lori Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Thank you so much for joining us again on Fearless Females. I am so excited to have listeners, so I appreciate everyone who's listening in on this. Our guest today is Catherine, and she is in compliance. And I think that my favorite part of our conversation is just talking about how in finance, there's a couple of paths that maybe boys go down and a couple of paths that girls go down. And compliance, operations, those are the paths that traditionally are more women went down those paths. Financial advisor, when you're in investment analysis, those are kind of more men are directed towards those paths. And that's changing. And we hope that it'll change a little bit more. But I think that it was interesting talking to Catherine when she was talking about maybe what would have helped her choose a different path than the one that the compliance path may have been a mentor or someone who could have shown her that there were women in this field. And I just found that really interesting because that's kind of why I started this podcast, is to help people see that there are women in these roles, in these different roles. You can be a pilot or a doctor or a financial advisor or a compliance person, and that there are lots of people that look like you in those roles. And even if there aren't very many people that look like you, the fact is there are some. So when we get into like our engineering or Savannah that runs the construction company, I just find it so interesting to see these female role models in all these different places. So let's get started. So we're here today with Catherine Teichert, who's the Senior Lead Consultant for Integrated Compliance Advisors. And thank you so much, Catherine, for taking the time out to talk with us today and answer some questions. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here, Lori.
So I've been looking forward to this conversation for a little while. We had a conversation with Kim Collins not too long ago, a couple months ago, and she just had such an interesting story, and she said, you've got to talk to Catherine. So I'm talking to Catherine. So Catherine, I'm a reader, and I'm always looking for a good book. Tell me, what is your favorite book?
I discovered this book maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And it's a very short book, a quick read. It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. And it is a wonderful, wonderful story.
Is it like a fiction story or like?
It's kind of a feel-good book. There are these characters, and the boy ends up kind of leaving his little town and meeting these animals. And they're just very supportive of each other and very encouraging. It's just like a good feeling book. And so whenever I've had a bad day, or I even read it to my daughter, it's just kind of uplifting, and it's a great story.
Oh, that's such a great thing. All right. Well, I'm putting it on my book list. I routinely send my kids out like a book, and I'm like, this is your book of the month. And that sounds like an amazing one to send.
It's very good. I think you'll like it.
So tell me just a little bit about your journey. How did you get where you are today? Like, how did your path lead you to where you're at?
Yeah. So nice to be talking with a fellow native Wyomingite. Grew up in a small town in northern Wyoming and had the opportunity to do my education on the East Coast. We had some family out there. So I did college on the East Coast and then ended up back in Denver. So not too far from home. I started working for a company actually in the medical devices industry. And it was something that I just kind of happened into. I was a sociology and Spanish major in college, and there wasn't a lot out there that ended up being, I guess, something I was really interested or passionate about. I went abroad twice in college, once to Ecuador and once in southern Mexico, and loved experiencing that. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll be an anthropologist, or maybe I'll do be a National Geographic photographer or something. Was always something I was super interested in. But my father is a retired orthopedic surgeon, and the medical field, not being a physician in particular, but the medical field was interesting to me. And so I worked in this company, and the gentleman was my mentor. He was amazing. And I worked for him for almost 5 years, and then decided I wanted to go back to get my master's in business, because I wanted to do something a little bit different and have a little bit better education, a rounded education. My sociology and Spanish was great, but there wasn't a lot I could do with it. And so I went back, got my master's from the University of Denver in business and finance, and I really became passionate about the finance component. Really loved the numbers, really loved that. And so I ended up doing an internship in my hometown with a registered investment advisor. And I did that in between my first and second year and really enjoyed it. And so went back down to Denver. I worked for a registered investment advisor in operations, and then delved into a little bit of compliance at that time as well. I was the director of operations and handled compliance. I'm in compliance now. So ultimately, that's kind of what brought me around to this point. The compliance wasn't necessarily something that I loved, but I loved the process. I loved, I'm kind of a rule follower. So I liked that there were rules, and we followed them, and we had processes and procedures, and it was great. So I worked for that firm for, again, about 5 years, and then decided Denver was getting a little too big for me. It was just, let's see, it was about 2010, I think, and I had lived there since 99. You living in Denver know how much it changed in that time period, right? And so I wanted to come back home. So I made that decision to come back home. I kept in touch with the gentleman from the registered investment advisor that I did my internship with, and they didn't really have any position for me at that time, but I kept in touch with him. And 2 or 3 years later, had the opportunity to join that firm as the investment department kind of manager, and then transitioned over into that chief compliance officer role. And so that's really kind of what shaped and led me to where I am here. I left that position to actually become a consultant. And so it's kind of full circle, I think. So that's kind of the story.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I majored in history. And so I understand, I went to college, I got a good degree, and then I was like, but what do you do with this degree?
Right. Right.
So, and I find it interesting that compliance struck your fancy. As an RIA and working inside of an RIA, usually compliance is not the cool thing or the fun thing to do. So that was something that you were like, oh, that's interesting. That's a thing I'm interested in.
Yes. And you couldn't be more spot on. It is not one of those things that people usually get very engaged in, or they intentionally choose to do it. But it was something that I was really good at. And I think when you are, you have a position that you're working at, it feels good. I mean, I was good at the finance stuff too. I was good at that. But I was just really good at keeping, that compliance program in really good shape, and just, I don't know why, it just fit. It fit.
It is. It's so satisfying when you're doing, when things are buttoned up and you're doing things in the right way. And that is satisfying. I get that. I'm kind of a rule follower too. So we might be two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
As you look back, Catherine, do you have something that you can say, hey, I am so glad I made that particular investment in myself? Like, as you look back over your career and things that you did, is there something particular you can point to? You're like, I'm so glad.
I think making that decision to go back to school, making that decision, the investment to get my master's degree and really just push myself to find out what my passion really was. I think being more well-rounded from a business perspective, and just, understanding finance. And then I think it just opened doorways. I think that education is really important. And I'm still paying for it. I'm almost paid off, but I thought it was a really good investment.
Yeah, I don't think education is ever a miss, but those student loans are a booger.
Yep.
Can you think of some time that maybe somebody gave you some really bad advice, or what's the worst advice someone ever gave you? And did you take it, or did you learn from it?
Nothing in particular, though someone said, you should do this, and I did and I didn't. I think for the most part, when people give advice, I tend to really be critical at this point in my career and not just listen to anything that might be said. And I think you learn that after a while. So I can't think of anything that was really terrible advice that it really impacted my life or my career. But I think you need to understand intentions when you're listening to advice.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important point too, is that just because somebody tells you something, it doesn't make it true. So critically think as to whether that's true for you, whatever the advice is. Do you have something as you look back over your career and your path? Is there a situation maybe that you regretted handling the way you did, that you might have handled differently if you had to do it again?
I think the one thing I would have done differently is there was a job that I had that I should have left sooner. That wasn't going to be a good place for me. And there were signs really everywhere. And I hesitated and I shouldn't have. So I think looking back, I would have left that job a lot sooner than I did.
What were some of the things that you look back and you're like, oh, that should have been a red flag. I definitely should have left that sooner. Were there specific signs you can say, hey, if you see those?
Right. No, I think one of the things is particularly of maybe just feeling a little bit, maybe underappreciated and kind of disrespected in a way, really are triggers. I think it's really important to feel appreciated and understand that the work that you're doing is valuable. And that was not necessarily the feeling that I was getting. And then also just feeling respected, that being in the position I was something that, I needed, the support of the entire firm. And that really comes from the top. And so I think that there was just evidence to me that I wasn't getting that support or that respect.
And you could feel that, and you maybe would have, out of curiosity, how long did you stay, and how long do you think you should have stayed?
Well, I stayed quite a while, and I probably should have left probably 2 years before I did.
So maybe look out for those warning signs that you're not being treated with the respect and that you deserve there.
Yeah, and I think important to know that there are other options out there for you. Don't feel like you're stuck in a job if you're unhappy. There are other options out there.
If you could go back and talk to yourself at 20, 21 years old, what would you tell her?
Oh, gosh. How long do we have?
Yeah.
I think, just to keep it short, I think just embrace the journey. It's not about the destination. And really for me, you just let go of that control sometime and don't take things too seriously. I find that, I am kind of a planner and I like to be kind of in control. And sometimes it's better just to let that go and just embrace that journey and enjoy every minute, I think. But yeah. And at 20, 21, there's just so much you don't know. And you don't think that at the time. But, when you get into your 40s, I think you reflect back thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't know anything. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that too. I think like, oh my goodness, that's, part of the reason for this podcast is I'm like, what didn't I know that would have been so helpful along the path if I had known it so much earlier in life? What changes would I have made? What would I have done differently?
Mm-hmm.
What scared you the most when you started out on your career? And does it still scare you, or did you find a way to make it maybe less of a boogeyman?
Yeah. I think for me, again, I'm kind of, a planner and I like to know things. I think so for me, it was just kind of the unknown, not knowing exactly, how a job was going to progress or, where my career path was leading me. I didn't have something, as a child, I was going to say, my sister, again, wanted to be a surgeon like my dad. And so she had that pathway very clear for her. And I never really found that until I was older and tried some things out. And so that unknown for me it didn't make me very comfortable. But now I just embrace it. I just learned to let go a lot more than I did.
Are there any specific things that you do to let go? Because I would love to hear them.
Oh, well, I am a big exercise person, so I go running a lot. Any kind of exercise really helps me de-stress. I like to read. I love to travel. And I just love to have just downtime with my family. So just really critical, I think, to me to make time to do those things. Yeah. And really take care of yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you take care of yourself so that you can put the energy and effort into reminding yourself it's not the worst, most scary situation in the world, right?
Right.
What about you work in finance and in financial services? Did you face any unique challenges because you were a female? There's not a lot of us in this industry.
I agree. I think we all do. I started the industry, over 20 years ago. And I think we've made some progress, but I think it's inevitable. And I think it's just the nature of financial services. It just is primarily male dominated. It is just a fact. And it's not as though there aren't very, very successful women in financial services. There absolutely are. And I think that respect is there. But I think it is a difficult field to enter as a woman. But I feel like, you doing this podcast and informing women, I just love it. I love that you're doing it.
Oh, thank you. Is there anything specific you can think of that you're like, oh, that would have been different if I were not a female?
I think that a lot of roles in financial services end up being, human resources are for women, or compliance is for women, or marketing is for women. So I think that might have pushed me a little towards the compliance area instead of being, going to that CFA and maybe even being a financial advisor. So maybe nothing overt, but just maybe that tendency that's a natural path that you kind of get guided towards as a woman in finance.
Yeah, girls go this way and guys go this way. Is there anything you can think of, and this is just because I'm interested, that would have maybe opened up both paths to your eyes? Like, is there anything that you can think of that would have helped you?
Yeah, I think if there had been, when I was starting out, if there had been a woman in one of those other departments that could have mentored me, I think that would have shifted my path.
Yeah.
And so I think that's
I like that.
Really important. Just that ability to have someone you can mentor with, or someone that you can, and it's nice to have a woman do it. I mean, my first real job out of college with the medical device firm, he was an amazing mentor, which was fabulous. Very, very small firm. But I think in financial services, having the ability to have a woman as a mentor, I think is really important.
So what did your, to get off topic just a minute, but what did your mentor do that was so amazing? So I can do those same things for my people.
Yeah, he was brilliant. He was an inventor and had many patents and had these medical devices that were amazing. And he just was so open with everything with me. Nothing was a secret. He was teaching me everything he knew about the business. Nothing was, this is beneath me to be spending time with you. I want you to know everything about this business. I mean, from the books to the patents to the facilities that we worked with to every little thing. He just was so open and sharing. And he was encouraging, because I was young. I was 21. I was just barely out of college, not knowing what I wanted to do. And he just was encouraging and just really open to everything. He was open to my questions. He would sit and answer questions for an hour if I had them, right? Just trying to learn, because he was so passionate about what he did and he wanted to help me learn it. And so I think those were the big things that he did that really encouraged me. And he encouraged me to go pursue my master's degree. I mean, he just was selfless in all that he did for me.
Yeah. I love that. I love that example. What a nice example to have so early on in your career.
Very lucky. Yes.
I had a wonderful woman, Christy, when I started in financial services on the operations, the paperwork piece. And I know what you're saying, because she used to answer questions for me all the time. And the best part about Christy is that she would answer the same question over and over and over again until I got it through my thick head.
Yes.
Looking back on all that you've done and all that you've accomplished and where you've come, what are you most proud of, Catherine?
Oh, gosh. I think from a personal level, I think being a mom is just I'm so proud of that. And I love being a mom.
Yeah.
And then professionally, I think learning to have a really healthy work-life balance. For a lot of years, I worked many, many, many hours, and I did not have that work-life balance. And I struggled sometimes with stress. I struggled with, some health issues. I got shingles at a very young age, and then I've had them 4 or 5 times. And so really just tried to tell myself, again, kind of let it go and really make sure that I've got that healthy work-life balance, because ultimately, if you're not healthy, you're going to be unhappy, and it's not good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I am not as far down that path as you are. I'm still struggling with work-life balance. And any hints you can give me on that, other than running, I haven't run for a while.
Oh, I mean, anything that just calms you. I read books. I mean, you're a big reader, so hopefully reading helps you kind of decompress a little bit. The great thing about reading is that it lets you escape. I escape into that story, or I escape into that book or that character. And so that's also one thing that I love. I love also listening to music. So that's something that I don't really care to watch a lot of TV. So if something's on in the house, it's music. And so I love to do that. It's relaxing to me as well.
So did you have to come to that realization that you needed to find that balance yourself, or did someone else help you get there, a coach or a mentor or something like that? Or how did you decide, hey, this is a lot. I need to figure this out?
Well, I think it just came down to I was looking around at friends and colleagues, and they weren't doing what I was doing. They weren't putting in all those hours. And it got me thinking, maybe it doesn't have to be like this. Like, I don't need to put in 80 hours every week. That's just not sustainable. I mean, I was tired all the time. I was, the health issues were not improving. And so I think I just made that self-realization. This is not how I can continue to live. It's just not sustainable.
You can tell I'm very interested in this, but so how did you go from 80 hours a week? I'm always panicked. I'm like, but if I stop working, then who's going to do it?
Yep.
So how did you adjust?
I know, very slowly. And that is part of what I came to the conclusion that the work will always be there. And so I learned really to prioritize what absolutely had to be done over things that were on my list, because I can tell you there has probably not been one day in 20 years where I got everything done on my list. And I just learned to accept it. I just learned to say, this is what's going to happen. Yes, I'm going to make my list, but I'm going to prioritize, and I'm going to learn what really has to be done. And I'm going to do those things first. And then if I have time for the other things, I'm going to get to those. So, and I really was really conscious with myself on your expectation that you're going to get everything done all the time is completely unrealistic.
Uh-huh. I've heard people say too that they're like gotten better at saying no, like not putting things on that list. Was that part of your process too?
Yes, absolutely was. So if I got to something and thought, oh, that'd be a nice to get done, I wouldn't even put it on the list that day. I also am crazy about sticky notes, which is not great, but I would just put that one on a sticky note for later. So
that actually is a really good idea. Like an idea of having just a like for later list. Like when I just need something that I haven't been working on for a while. I've got like a my list of someday I will do that sort of thing.
And those could be my distraction tasks too. Like if I got into something really heavy that I was doing that I was really having to pay attention and I needed a break, and I could go do filing or something that was just kind of mindless, then I could just get away from that really intense task that I was doing by doing something just kind of administrative or something that, I mean, if I filed it in this folder versus this folder, I'd be disappointed. I'd go back and find it. But it wasn't going to be something where if I'm making, a regulatory filing, right, I need to be paying very good attention to it because it needs to be 100% accurate. Well, I'm going to pay more attention to that. But I did need those other tasks that were just maybe not as critical.
I think that's what I use Salesforce for. I program Salesforce on the back end, and that's like my fun thing. So That's how crazy I am. So,
but I also think that learning to say no is really important. So if you have someone who's always pushing tasks onto you, I think it is important to have those boundaries and say, look, I'm over capacity right now, and I can't take that on for you right now.
I think I need to find a book that tells me how to do that, because I'm always like, yeah, that sounds great. And it always does sound great to me.
Yeah.
So any advice for a young lady who is just starting down on this path? If you could meet someone at the beginning of the career that you've had, so many years kind of perfecting so that she could be successful like you, what would you guide her to do?
I think most importantly is keep investing in yourself. I think that's really important. Continue, gaining knowledge. Learning is important. I love to learn. Learning is so important. You'll never know it all. So continue to do that. Take care of yourself. Spend time doing the things that you love. The job, the position, the occupation, it will come with time. But I think critically, take time to do the things you love. Take care of yourself. Again, I exercise every day. And then make sure you can be independent, I think is really important too. And that lucky enough to be successful in my career, and that if it came to a point where I was in a position where, again, I didn't want to stay, I stayed another 2 years in my other position because I was worried about making a transition, worried about what that job would be there. I think having financial security is really important. So being aware of your finances and being smart on what you're spending money on is really important. And then again, I think just to build independence, travel when you can, especially internationally. I love to travel. I find it so fascinating to experience new cultures. And I think that it just really broadens your horizon and gives you a different perspective. And so when I come back from traveling, I'm usually so re-engaged in my work and re-engaged in what I'm doing. And so I think it's nice to have that getaway. I think take vacation. Don't work all the time. Lori, take vacation.
I know. My team is doing actually an amazing job. Last time I went out of the office, they're like, okay, Lori, you absolutely cannot check the group chat while you're on vacation. It's not allowed. And I did pretty good. I did check it once and got in trouble. But
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of just taking that time to rejuvenate and to, you're right. I actually have been, like I said, I read a lot, and I've been reading a lot of books where, Steve Jobs, like his vacations were going out and then he had these ideas and he would always come up with great ideas while your brain is thinking in a different way, or you're not thinking about work, you're able to notice patterns or different things that could be helpful.
Absolutely. And I think you come back from a vacation, and even if it's not international, even if it's just to a place in the United States where you've never been, it just shifts my perspective a little bit. And I can completely understand Steve Jobs in that when you're not in a place where you're so comfortable, or that you get complacent and it's just a day-to-day thing and nothing changes, your mind kind of gets maybe a little stagnant, right? To build your creativity, maybe you need to step outside that comfort zone.
I talked to someone once, I can't remember who it was, but he said he took like a half an hour, left the office, went somewhere, I don't know, he's fishing a hole or something like that, and just was still and thought a little bit about life in general. And it always, that time, that rejuvenation time, was so critical for his progression. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Catherine, for your time with us today and for answering the questions and giving me a little bit of insight. And I'm going to practice really, really hard on that work-life balance. Hopefully I'll make it one day.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier for me too. We've got a lot of animals around us, so I always they make me feel guilty if I'm not taking the dogs out or out with the horses or anything. So that helps me too. It's encouraging because I have guilt, right?
Yeah. There we go. My husband will love that one. We need to get a dog so that I feel guilty for not taking on a walk.
Then you can go out, take your dog for a walk, and then you'll have some time away.
There we go. If we have young ladies who are listening to this that want to learn more about you, where do they go?
yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, or they can find me on the Integrated Compliance Advisors website as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time, and you're taking this time out of your busy schedule and busy day to help us out.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm honored that you invited me to be on your podcast.